The massive holographic display flickered to life in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, casting blue light across the faces of representatives from 47 different species. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, suspended in the void between three dying stars, its crystalline walls offering a breathtaking view of the cosmos. But today, none of the assembled delegates were admiring the scenery. "The matter before us today is unprecedented," announced Zexathera, the Council's prime arbitrator. Her 6 arms gestured gracefully as she spoke, each movement precise and calculated. The Velthari were known for their diplomatic skills, which is why her species had held the position of prime arbitrator for the last 3 centuries. "We have discovered a new species that has achieved faster-than-light travel without our guidance or permission." A ripple of concerned murmurs swept through the chamber. The translator systems worked overtime, converting the sounds into something resembling unified concern across dozens of languages and communication methods. "Impossible," growled Korthak, the Brulgan war chief whose species looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a tank. His massive frame shook the floor as he stood. "Every species in the galaxy has been cataloged. Every world capable of supporting intelligent life has been monitored since the Great Expansion." "And yet," Zexathera continued, her voice cutting through the noise, "our long-range sensors have detected artificial wormhole signatures originating from a previously unmonitored system. The beings responsible call themselves humans, and their world is designated as Sol 3 in our star charts." The chamber fell silent. Even the normally chattering Pixari delegates stopped their constant whispered conversations. Dr. Yilmoth, the Council's chief xenobiologist, activated his personal display with a tentacle-like appendage. His jellyfish-like form pulsed with bioluminescent patterns as he spoke. "Initial analysis suggests these humans developed FTL technology independently. Their methods are crude but effective. They appear to use controlled antimatter reactions to create temporary space-time distortions." "Antimatter?" The voice belonged to Selenra, representative of the machine collective known as the Synthesis. Her robotic form whirred as processing units worked overtime. "Organic beings using antimatter for propulsion? The risk factors alone should have eliminated their species long before they achieved such capability." Zexathara nodded gravely. "Which brings us to the issue at hand. These humans have violated Protocol 7 of the Galactic Advancement Charter. No species may develop faster-than-light travel without Council oversight and approval. The protocol exists for good reason. Unsupervised FTL development has led to 17 recorded galactic catastrophes in our recorded history. The memories of those disasters hung heavy in the chamber. The Centauri Cascade, where an entire arm of the galaxy had been rendered uninhabitable when an experimental drive tore holes in reality itself. The Mechlon incident, where temporal distortions from primitive time travel experiments had erased 3 civilizations from existence. The protocols weren't just bureaucratic red tape. They were written in the blood of billions. "What do we know about their military capabilities?" asked General Thoxran of the Hegemony military. His insectoid features remained impassive, but his mandibles clicked in what his species considered a thoughtful gesture. Dr. Yilmoth consulted his data again. "Primitive by our standards, but concerning given their apparent disregard for safety protocols. They utilize kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, and something they call nuclear weaponry. Most disturbing is evidence that they have actually used these nuclear weapons against their own species." The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. The idea of a species using weapons of mass destruction against itself was almost incomprehensible to most council races, who had evolved beyond such barbaric practices millennia ago. "Savages!" spat Korthak. "They'll destroy themselves and possibly take half the galaxy with them if left unchecked." "Perhaps," said Zexathara, raising her arms for silence. but they have achieved FTL travel, which demonstrates significant technological capability. The question before us is how to proceed. Counselor Atheris of the Ascended spoke for the first time, her energy-based form shimmering as she communicated through modulated electromagnetic waves. The Galactic Charter is clear. Any species that achieves FTL without Council approval must be brought under our authority for the safety of all galactic civilization. They must be integrated into our society under strict supervision. Integration implies they have a choice in the matter, observed Vox, the hive mind representative. The single entity that spoke for trillions of connected consciousnesses rarely contributed to debates, making its input all the more significant. Do they? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The truth was that the Galactic Council's authority had never been questioned. For over 10,000 years, they had guided the development of every spacefaring species in the galaxy. Some had joined willingly, eager for the advanced technology and knowledge the Council offered. Others had required more persuasion. They will be given the opportunity to join peacefully, Zexathera announced. We will send a diplomatic envoy to their world to explain the situation and offer them membership in the galactic community. If they refuse, she let the implication hang unspoken. The vote was unanimous, as it always was when it came to matters of galactic security. The humans would be contacted, informed of the Council's authority, and given a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. 3 days later, the diplomatic vessel, Harmony of Stars, dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Sol system. Captain Jexalinda, an experienced Taldori diplomat, known for her success in first contact situations, studied the system's layout on her bridge displays. Fascinating, she murmured to her science officer. They've actually established outposts throughout their star system. Primitive, but remarkably extensive for such a young spacefaring species. The human ships that intercepted them were indeed crude by galactic standards, bulky vessels that looked more like flying bricks than the elegant, streamlined craft of civilized species. But they moved with purpose and precision that spoke to competent crews. Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force, came the transmission. The universal translator struggled with the harsh, clipped sounds of the human language before settling on a workable approximation. You have entered Sol system space without authorization. State your intentions immediately. Captain Jexalinda had dealt with hundreds of first contact situations, and the pattern was always the same. Initial hostility, followed by awe when the aliens realized they were dealing with a galactic civilization, then eager acceptance of Council authority. These humans would be no different. This is Captain Jexalinda of the Galactic Council diplomatic vessel Harmony of Stars, she responded, allowing a note of patient authority to enter her voice. We come in peace to welcome your species into the galactic community. Please prepare to receive our delegation on your homeworld. There was a long pause. When the human admiral responded, her voice carried a tone that Jexalinda couldn't quite identify. Galactic Council? That's interesting. We weren't aware the galaxy had a central government. All spacefaring species fall under Council authority, Jexalinda explained, beginning her standard first contact speech. This is for the safety and prosperity of all galactic civilization. Your species has developed faster-than-light travel without proper oversight, which violates established protocols. We are here to correct this situation. Another pause. Then, I see. And what exactly does this correction involve? Your species will be integrated into the galactic community under Council supervision. Your FTL technology will be regulated, your expansion controlled, and your development guided to ensure compatibility with galactic civilization. This is not negotiable. It is how things have always been done. The silence that followed stretched long enough that Jexalinda began to wonder if the communication link had been severed. When Admiral Chen finally responded, There was something in her voice that made the diplomatic captain's scales ripple with unease. "Captain, I'm going to need you to hold position while I consult with my superiors. This conversation just got very interesting." The human ships maintained their formation around the harmony of stars, not threatening but clearly prepared for trouble. Jexalinda settled in to wait, confident that within a few hours she would be addressing the human leadership and explaining the terms of their inevitable integration into galactic civilization. She had no idea that on Earth, Admiral Chen was already in contact with the most powerful military and political leaders of a species that had never in all its violent history bowed down to anyone without a fight. The emergency session of the United Earth Council convened within 6 hours of first contact. Representatives from every major nation and colony sat around a massive table in the orbital station New Geneva, while Admiral Chen's report played on screens throughout the chamber. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said President Martinez of the American Federation. "These aliens are telling us that we need their permission to travel through space." "That's the essence of it," Admiral Chen confirmed via hologram from her flagship. "They claim authority over the entire galaxy and consider our FTL development a violation of their laws." Director Petrov of the Russian Colonial Union laughed, a sound without humor. "And I suppose they expect us to just comply? To hand over our sovereignty to beings we've never met?" The diplomatic tone suggested it wasn't really a request, Chen replied. "More like an ultimatum with polite language." Prime Minister Okafor of the African Alliance leaned forward. "What do we know about their capabilities?" "Their ship is approximately 3 times the size of our largest dreadnought," Admiral Chen reported. "Initial scans suggest advanced technology, but nothing that seems impossible to counter with sufficient force. However, if they truly represent a galactic civilization, they likely have resources we can't match." Chancellor Wei of the Pacific Coalition spoke quietly. "Perhaps we should consider their offer. Membership in a galactic community could bring tremendous benefits." "Under their supervision," pointed out General Morrison of the European Federation. "They want to control our expansion, regulate our technology. Essentially, they want to turn us into their vassals." "That's not necessarily," Chancellor Wei began. "It's exactly what it is," interrupted President Okoye of the United African States. "They're offering us the choice between voluntary subjugation and involuntary subjugation. Some choice." Secretary General Harrison of the United Nations looked around the table. "The question is, what do we do about it? We can't fight an entire galactic civilization." "Can't we?" General Morrison's question sent a chill through the chamber. "Our ancestors fought against impossible odds before. Sometimes they won." "This isn't ancient history," protested Director Chen of the Asian Cooperative. "This is reality. If we resist, they could destroy us." President Martinez stood slowly. "They could try. But they're making the same mistake that stronger powers have made throughout human history. They're assuming that superior technology guarantees victory. They're assuming we'll be reasonable." A grim smile spread across Admiral Chen's face as she watched the discussion from her ship. These aliens had studied human technology, but apparently they hadn't studied human history. They didn't understand that humanity had a long, proud tradition of telling larger, more powerful entities exactly where they could stick their ultimatums. "Admiral," President Martinez addressed the hologram directly, "what's your professional assessment of their military preparedness?" "They're confident, sir. Overconfident. Their ship designs prioritize elegance over armor. Their approach was predictable, textbook diplomacy. They're used to dealing with the harmony of stars. Had been waiting for 18 hours when Admiral Chen finally returned with Earth's official response. Captain Jexalinda had used the time to study more data about the human species, and what she found both fascinated and disturbed her. These humans were incredibly violent by galactic standards. Their entire recorded history was one continuous series of conflicts, wars, and struggles. Yet somehow, this violence had driven them to remarkable technological achievements in an impossibly short time. Most species took 50,000 years to develop from basic agriculture to FTL travel. Humans had done it in less than 10,000. Captain Jexalinda, Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the communication system. We've reviewed your proposal with our leadership. We're prepared to give you our answer. Finally, Jexalinda thought. Now they would see sense. We are prepared to receive your acceptance of Council authority. Please transmit your formal surrender, and we will begin the integration process. There was a pause. Then Admiral Chen spoke again, and there was something in her voice that Jexalinda had never heard in any first contact situation before. It was laughter, but not the kind that indicated amusement. Captain, I need to make sure I understand your position correctly. You represent a government that claims authority over species it's never met, in star systems it's never visited, based on laws those species never agreed to follow? The Galactic Council has maintained order and peace for over 10,000 years, Jexalinda replied, beginning to feel the first stirrings of unease. Our authority is established by right of civilization and necessity. Right of civilization, Admiral Chen repeated slowly. That's interesting. You know what we call that kind of thinking on Earth? Imperialism. And we have a very long history of dealing with imperialists. I don't understand. Your species has achieved FTL travel. Surely you recognize the need for oversight and guidance from more advanced civilizations. Advanced? The laughter in Admiral Chen's voice grew sharper. Captain, you've been sitting in our space for almost 20 hours. In that time, my tactical officers have identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in your ship's design. Our engineers have analyzed your propulsion system and developed 3 different ways to disrupt it. And our intelligence division has cracked your basic communication encryptions. Jexalinda's scales rippled with shock. That's impossible. Our technology is thousands of years more advanced than yours. Your technology is thousands of years more refined than ours, Admiral Chen corrected. There's a difference. You've spent millennia perfecting what works. We've spent centuries learning to break what we can't build yet. The human admiral's next words sent a chill through the diplomatic captain's 4 hearts. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me formally deliver Earth's response to your ultimatum. Admiral Chen's voice became crisp and official. The sovereign nations and colonies of Earth unanimously reject the authority of the Galactic Council. We recognize no government we did not elect, no laws we did not write, and no authority we did not consent to grant. You cannot simply reject. Furthermore, Admiral Chen continued, cutting her off, we consider your ultimatum an act of aggression and your demands an attempted violation of our sovereignty. Earth's response is simple. Leave our system immediately, or we will remove you. The silence on the bridge of the Harmony of Stars was absolute. In 10,000 years of galactic history, no species had ever simply said no to the Council's authority. Admiral Chen, Jexalinda said slowly, I don't think you understand what you're saying. The Galactic Council commands the resources of 47 spacefaring civilizations. We have fleets that could sterilize your entire world from orbit. Then you'd better bring them, Admiral Chen replied, because this conversation is over. The communication link cut off. On the bridge of her ship, Jexalinda stared at the static-filled screen in complete bewilderment. This wasn't how first contact worked. This wasn't how any species behaved when faced with the might of galactic civilization. Captain, her tactical officer spoke urgently, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. The humans are powering up weapons. Jexalinda looked at her displays and felt her blood turn cold. The primitive human ships that had been maintaining a respectful distance were now moving into attack formations. More concerning, her sensors were detecting energy readings from across the Sol system, space stations, orbital platforms. Even some of the larger asteroids were showing signs of military activity. "How many ships do they have?" she asked. "Unknown, Captain. But based on these readings, they've militarized their entire star system." Before Jexalinda could respond, Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge again, but now it was being broadcast on all frequencies, a system-wide announcement that every ship, station, and settlement in Sol space would hear. "This is Admiral Chen to all Earth Defense Forces. Priority 1 alert is now in effect. An alien vessel in Sol space has delivered an ultimatum demanding Earth's surrender. They claim to represent something called the Galactic Council that asserts authority over our entire species." Even through the universal translator, Jexalinda could hear the mixture of anger and determination in the human admiral's voice. "Earth's answer is the same it's always been when faced with tyrants. Hell no. All military units are to implement Defiance Protocol. If these aliens want to fight, let's show them what happens when you threaten Earth." Across the Sol system, humanity's response began to unfold. Ships that had been running silent suddenly lit up with active sensors and weapons systems. Orbital defense platforms that had looked like harmless industrial stations revealed massive railgun batteries. Mining ships in the asteroid belt turned to reveal missile pods hidden in their cargo bays. But what truly shocked Captain Jexalinda was the civilian response. Instead of panic or attempts to flee, every civilian station and ship in the system was moving to support the military. Cargo vessels were dumping their loads to make room for weapons. Passenger liners were launching fighter craft that had apparently been stored in their shuttle bays. Even scientific research stations were training sensor arrays and improvised weapons toward the harmony of stars. "Captain," her science officer reported in a shaking voice, "I'm detecting quantum signatures from across the system. They're not just preparing to fight. They're preparing to prevent us from jumping to FTL." "That's impossible," Jexalinda whispered. "They can't have that kind of technology." "They don't need sophisticated technology," her tactical officer realized with growing horror. "They're going to detonate antimatter charges around natural jump points. The quantum interference will make FTL travel impossible until the distortions fade." As if to confirm their fears, Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system one more time. "Captain Jexalinda, in case you're monitoring our communications, I want you to understand something. You came here with one ship and demanded our surrender. You told us we had no choice but to submit to your authority." The human admiral paused, and when she continued, there was something in her voice that made Jexalinda's primitive predator avoidance instincts scream warnings. "You were wrong. There's always a choice. And humanity chooses to fight." The first missiles launched 60 seconds later. They weren't sophisticated weapons by galactic standards, simple kinetic warheads with chemical propulsion systems that any civilized species had discarded millennia ago. But there were hundreds of them, launched from dozens of different platforms, coming from all directions at once. The harmony of stars. Defensive systems engaged automatically, shooting down the primitive missiles with ease. Energy beams and interceptor drones made short work of the chemical-fueled projectiles. "Is that it?" Jexalinda asked, almost laughing with relief. "These weapons can't even penetrate our shields." Her tactical officer's face had gone pale. "Captain, I think those were just the first wave." The second wave consisted of more sophisticated missiles, ones with basic guidance systems and enhanced warheads. The third wave included weapons that actually managed to impact the shields, though they still couldn't penetrate. The fourth wave made the defensive systems work harder. By the eighth wave, Jexalinda realized what the humans were doing. They weren't trying to destroy her ship with any single attack. They were learning. Each wave was slightly more effective than the last, incorporating lessons from how the previous attacks had been defeated. "Captain," her chief engineer reported, Our defensive systems are beginning to show strain. These constant attacks are forcing us to maintain shields at maximum power. They're wearing us down, Jexalinda realized. How long can our systems maintain this level of defense? At current consumption rates, perhaps 6 hours. 6 hours. Against one ship with weapons thousands of years more primitive than her own, and they could only hold out for 6 hours. The implications were staggering. "Captain," her communications officer spoke urgently, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. High priority." The hologram of Prime Arbitrator Zex Thara materialized on the bridge, her 6 arms moving in agitation. "Captain Jexalinda, your last report indicated successful contact with the humans. Why haven't you transmitted their acceptance of Council authority?" Jexalinda looked around her bridge, where alarms were blaring, and her crew was working frantically to maintain shields against the constant barrage of human weapons. "Prime Arbitrator, there have been complications." "What sort of complications?" "The humans have refused to accept Council authority. They are currently attacking my ship." The silence from the other end of the transmission stretched for long moments. When Zexathera finally spoke, her voice carried complete disbelief. "They're attacking you? A single diplomatic vessel? That's suicide." "With respect, Prime Arbitrator, it may not be as suicidal as we assumed. Their weapons are primitive, but they appear to have unlimited ammunition, and they're adapting their tactics with each attack." Another massive impact shook the ship as a new type of human missile, one with a shaped charge warhead designed specifically to exploit a weakness the previous attacks had identified, struck their shields. "Prime Arbitrator," Jexalinda said urgently, "I request immediate backup. These humans are not like any species we've encountered before." "How so?" Jexalinda watched as yet another wave of missiles approached, these ones using entirely new propulsion systems that her crew hadn't seen before. The humans were literally designing new weapons in real time and deploying them within hours. "They don't fight like they're trying to win," she said slowly. "They fight like they're trying to learn, and they're learning very, very quickly." The transmission cut off as another impact overloaded their communication systems temporarily. When it was restored, Prime Arbitrator Zex Thara's expression had changed from disbelief to something approaching concern. "Captain, maintain your position. Council fleet elements are being dispatched to assist you. Under no circumstances are you to retreat. The authority of the Council cannot be challenged." The transmission ended, leaving Jexalinda alone on her bridge as her ship shuddered under another barrage of human weapons. Through the view screen, she could see dozens of human ships maneuvering in complex patterns, launching attacks from unexpected angles, coordinating with a precision that spoke to extensive military experience. These weren't the actions of a primitive species facing superior technology. These were the actions of veteran warriors who had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting against impossible odds and finding ways to win anyway. As another impact sent her sprawling, Captain Jexalinda began to wonder if the Galactic Council truly understood what they were dealing with. The humans hadn't just rejected their authority, they were actively fighting to protect their rejection. And from what she could see, they were very, very good at fighting. The 23rd wave of missiles was different from all the others. These weren't kinetic weapons or chemical explosives. These were antimatter warheads, crude ones, but antimatter nonetheless. The humans had gone from chemical rockets to antimatter weapons in less than 8 hours. When the first antimatter warhead detonated against their shields, the harmony of stars lurched like a living thing in pain. "How?" Jexalinda whispered. "How did they develop antimatter weapons so quickly?" Her science officer looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Captain, I don't think they developed them. I think they've had them all along. They've been holding back." The implications hit her like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been fighting at full capacity. They'd been testing her ship's defenses, learning its capabilities, and only now. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in the organization's 10,000-year history. Representatives from all 47 member species filled the Great Chamber, while the holographic displays showed real-time data from the Sol system that defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. "This is impossible," growled Korthak, the Brulgan war chief. His massive form trembled with barely contained rage. "No single species can stand against the might of galactic civilization." "Tell that to Captain Jexa-Linda," replied Dr. Yilmoth grimly. The xenobiologist's bioluminescent patterns flickered in distress as he studied the tactical reports. "Her ship has been under constant attack for 14 hours. The humans show no signs of fatigue or ammunition shortage." Prime Arbitrator Zexathara stood at the center of the chamber, her 6 arms moving in complex gestures of authority and concern. "The situation has escalated beyond our initial projections. Admiral Vorthak, what is the status of our response fleet?" The Hegemony military commander activated his tactical display with precise movements. His insectoid features remained impassive, but those who knew his species could see the tension in the way his mandibles clicked rapidly. "Task Force Alpha, consisting of 12 heavy cruisers and 4 dreadnoughts, will reach the Sol system in 6 hours. Task Force Beta, our main battle fleet, will arrive in 18 hours with sufficient firepower to sterilize the entire human star system." "Sterilize?" The question came from Counselor Etheris, her energy form shimmering with distress. "Are we seriously considering genocide as a response to resistance?" "They attacked a diplomatic vessel," General Thoxran pointed out coldly. "Under galactic law, that constitutes an act of war against all member species." "They attacked an ultimatum delivery," corrected Vox, the hive mind representative. The collective consciousness rarely spoke during council sessions, making its intervention all the more significant. "We ordered them to surrender their sovereignty. They refused and defended their refusal. This is not unprovoked aggression." The chamber erupted in debate. Some species called for immediate massive retaliation. Others suggested attempting further diplomacy, and a few quietly wondered if the council had overstepped its authority. "Enough!" Zexthara's voice cut through the chaos. "The authority of the council is absolute. It has been accepted by every spacefaring species for 10 millennia. We cannot allow one primitive species to set a precedent of resistance." "Primitive?" Dr. Yilmoth's tentacles writhed in agitation. "Prime Arbitrator, I must object to that characterization. Yes, their technology is crude by our standards, but their tactical adaptation rate is unprecedented. They've improved their weapons' effectiveness by 400% in just 14 hours of combat." "It doesn't matter," Admiral Vorthak interrupted. "Adaptation rate is irrelevant when faced with sufficient overwhelming force. Once our main battle fleet arrives, this situation will be resolved quickly." "Will it?" The question came from an unexpected source. Selenra of the Synthesis Machine Collective. Her robotic form whirred as processing units worked overtime. "I have been analyzing the combat data from Captain Jexa-Linda's encounter. The humans are not fighting to win. They are fighting to learn." "What do you mean?" Zexathara demanded. "They could have destroyed the harmony of stars several hours ago," Selenra continued. "Their antimatter weapons are sufficient to breach standard diplomatic shielding. Instead, they are maintaining a careful balance. Enough pressure to keep our ship trapped, not enough to destroy it completely. They are studying us." A chill settled over the chamber as the implications sank in. "Furthermore," Selenra added, "they have been broadcasting our entire encounter on all frequencies. Every ship in their fleet, every station in their system, even their civilian population has access to real-time data about our capabilities, our tactics, and our responses." Counselor Etheris pulsed with alarm. "You're saying they're using this fight as a learning experience for their entire species?" "Precisely. While we see a single diplomatic vessel under attack, They see a comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation. By the time our reinforcements arrive, every human in their star system will know exactly how our technology works. The debate that followed was heated and chaotic. Some representatives demanded immediate deployment of the entire Council fleet. Others suggested negotiation. A few even quietly proposed recognizing human independence, though they were quickly shouted down. The decision, when it came, was inevitable. The authority of the Galactic Council could not be questioned. Task Force Beta would proceed with orders to subjugate the human species by any means necessary. But as the council session ended and representatives returned to their ships and stations, many carried with them a feeling of unease. They were about to unleash the full military might of galactic civilization against a single species that had existed in space for less than a century. It should have felt like certain victory. Instead, it felt like stepping into the unknown. 6 hours later, Task Force Alpha dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Kex Mara commanded the fleet from her flagship, Inevitable Justice, a massive dreadnought that had never known defeat in 3 centuries of service. "Status report," she commanded as her fleet moved into formation. 16 human vessels approaching our position, her tactical officer reported. "Primitive designs, but they're moving in coordinated attack patterns." Admiral Kex Mara studied the tactical display with growing puzzlement. 16 ships against a fleet of 16? Either the humans were incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "Admiral," her communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel." "Put it through." The face that appeared on her screen was that of a human male, middle-aged by their standards, with graying hair and eyes that held no fear whatsoever. "I am Commodore Jackson of the Earth Defense Force," the human said calmly. "You have entered Sol system space without authorization and with obvious hostile intent. This is your only warning. Leave immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Kex Mara almost laughed. "Commodore Jackson, I am Admiral Kex Mara of the Galactic Council Fleet. You are facing 16 of the most advanced warships in known space. Surrender immediately, and your species may survive this encounter." Commodore Jackson's expression didn't change. "Admiral, before you commit to this course of action, I want to make sure you understand something about humanity. We've been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We've fought with sticks and stones, with swords and guns, with chemical weapons and nuclear fire. We've fought each other, and now we're prepared to fight you. Your species' violent history is exactly why you must be brought under Council control," Admiral Kex Mara replied coldly. "Maybe," Jackson said with a slight smile, "but there's something else you should know about our violent history. We've gotten very, very good at it." The human transmission cut off. On her bridge, Admiral Kex Mara shook her head in disgust. "Tactical. Target the lead human vessel. Prepare to fire." "Admiral," her science officer interrupted urgently, "I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. The humans aren't just sending 16 ships against us. They're repositioning their entire fleet." "How many ships?" "Unknown, but sensor readings suggest thousands." Admiral Kex Mara felt her first stirring of unease. "Thousands? How is that possible?" "It appears they've militarized every vessel in their system. Cargo ships, passenger liners, mining vessels, construction platforms, everything capable of mounting weapons or carrying missiles." Before she could respond, her tactical display lit up with contact markers, hundreds of them, converging on her position from all directions. "This is suicide," she whispered. "They can't possibly believe they can win against our technology." Her tactical officer's voice carried a note of confusion. "Admiral, they're not trying to win. They're trying to surround us." The human attack, when it came, was like nothing in recorded military history. Instead of concentrating their forces for maximum effect, The humans spread out across an enormous volume of space, attacking from dozens of different vectors simultaneously. Their individual ships were pathetic, converted civilian vessels with improvised weapons that couldn't hope to penetrate Council shielding. But there were hundreds of them, and they fought with a coordination that spoke to extensive planning and preparation. "How are they coordinating this?" Admiral Kexmara demanded as her fleet found itself surrounded by a swarm of human vessels. "Unknown," her communications officer replied, "but they're using some form of instantaneous communication across the entire battle space. Every ship knows exactly what every other ship is doing." The battle that followed lasted for 8 hours. The Council ships, with their superior technology and heavy armor, destroyed human vessels by the dozens. But for every ship they eliminated, 2 more seemed to take its place, and with each wave, the human attacks became more sophisticated, more precisely targeted, more effective. "Admiral," her chief engineer reported, "our weapons are overheating. We're not designed for this kind of sustained combat." Admiral Kexmara stared at her tactical display in growing horror. Her fleet had destroyed over 200 human vessels, but they were still surrounded, still under constant attack, and their own ships were beginning to show serious strain. "How many more ships do they have?" she demanded. "Sensors indicate at least 3,000 vessels of various sizes still operational in system," came the reply. 3,000, against her 16. And the humans showed no sign of retreating, no indication of fear or despair. They fought like machines, but machines that learned and adapted with every exchange. When the first Council ship, the heavy cruiser Galactic Harmony, was finally destroyed by concentrated human fire, Admiral Kexmara realized they were in serious trouble. The humans had turned their entire star system into a weapon. Meanwhile, in the depths of space beyond Sol's heliopause, Task Force Beta was preparing for its own jump into the system. Admiral Zorthak commanded over 200 ships, including 20 dreadnoughts and the Council's most advanced vessel, the Super Dreadnought Final Authority. "Admiral," his intelligence officer reported, "we're receiving fragmentary communications from Admiral Kexmara's fleet. They appear to be engaged in heavy combat." "Impossible," Admiral Zorthak replied flatly. "Task Force Alpha has sufficient firepower to defeat anything the humans can field." "Yes, sir, but the transmissions suggest they're facing thousands of human vessels." Admiral Zorthak studied the preliminary reports with growing disbelief. The humans weren't just resisting, they were winning. A single species, barely out of their own star system, was successfully engaging the military might of galactic civilization. "Sir," his tactical officer announced, "we have a communication from the Galactic Council. Priority Alpha." The hologram of Prime Arbitrator Zexathera appeared on his bridge, her 6 arms moving in obvious agitation. "Admiral Zorthak, the situation in the Sol system has deteriorated beyond our worst projections. Task Force Alpha is under severe pressure and may not survive much longer." "How is that possible?" "The humans have demonstrated capabilities we never suspected. They've turned their entire star system into a military fortress. Intelligence estimates suggest they have between 5,000 and 10,000 vessels of various classes, all working in perfect coordination." Admiral Zorthak felt a chill run through his command staff. 10,000 ships, even if they were primitive, sheer numbers could eventually overwhelm superior technology. "Your orders, Admiral, are to jump directly into the Sol system and eliminate the human threat by any means necessary. The authority of the Galactic Council must be maintained." "Understood, Prime Arbitrator. We will not fail." But as his fleet prepared to jump, Admiral Zorthak couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans weren't fighting like a primitive species facing superior foes. They were fighting like apex predators defending their territory. And based on the reports from Task Force Alpha, they were winning. The final phase of the battle began when Task Force Beta dropped out of FTL directly into the heart of the Sol system, their massive fleet appearing in Earth's orbital space in a display of overwhelming force designed to shock the humans into immediate surrender. Instead, every human vessel in the system immediately converged on their position. What followed wasn't a battle in any traditional sense. It was a lesson in why humanity had dominated every environment they'd ever encountered, why they'd risen from primitive hunters to masters of their own world in an impossibly short time. The humans didn't fight to win. They fought to ensure that anyone who threatened them would remember the cost. They accepted casualties that would have broken any other species' will to fight, and kept coming. They adapted to Council weapons faster than those weapons could be modified. They learned from every defeat and turned that knowledge into victory. Most importantly, they made it clear that destroying them would require destroying everything: their worlds, their ships, their stations, their entire civilization. And even then, some would survive, carrying with them the knowledge of how to fight galactic civilization itself. When Admiral Zorthak's flagship, Final Authority, was finally crippled by a coordinated strike from 50 different human vessels, the surviving Council ships found themselves facing a choice: continue fighting until mutual annihilation was achieved, or admit that they had encountered something completely outside their experience. As rescue shuttles pulled the surviving Council crews from their damaged ships, Admiral Chen's voice carried across all frequencies with a message that would be remembered throughout galactic history. This is Admiral Chen of Earth. To any species receiving this transmission, understand this: Earth stands free, and free we will remain. We sought no conflict with the Galactic Council, but when they demanded our surrender, we gave them our answer in the only language that matters. If any others wish to test humanity's resolve, you are welcome to try. But remember what you've seen here. Remember what it costs to threaten Earth. The surviving Council ships were allowed to limp away from the Sol system, carrying with them the wreckage of 10,000 years of galactic precedent. For the first time in recorded history, a species had not only rejected Council authority, but had successfully defended that rejection against the full military might of galactic civilization. On Earth and throughout the Sol system, humanity celebrated not just their victory, but their freedom to chart their own course among the stars. They had proven that even the vast galaxy itself couldn't force them to bow down. The Galactic Council would never be quite the same. And humanity's message to the galaxy was crystal clear. Earth had spoken, and the galaxy had listened. The age of unquestioned galactic authority was over. The age of humanity among the stars had begun. Were they beginning to show their true strength? "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "long-range sensors are detecting additional human ships jumping in from other star systems. Lots of them." Jexalinda stared at the tactical display as dozens of new contacts appeared throughout the Sol system. The humans hadn't just militarized their home system. They had ships stationed throughout nearby space, and they were all converging on her position. For the first time in her diplomatic career, Captain Jexalinda began to consider the possibility that she might not survive this first contact mission. Outside her ship, Admiral Chen's voice carried across all frequencies with a message that would soon be broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. "This is Earth. We stand free. Anyone who wants to change that is welcome to try. PCs that roll over at the first display of superior technology." "And their weaknesses?" Admiral Chen's smile grew wider. "They followed our instructions to maintain position without question. They haven't taken any defensive precautions, and based on their communication protocols, they're not used to dealing with species that might actually fight back." The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Earth's reply to the Galactic Council would be delivered in the language humanity understood best, the language of defiance in the face of impossible odds. As the human leaders planned their response, Captain Jexalinda waited patiently in space, completely unaware that she was about to become part of the most important first contact in galactic history. The humans, she was certain, would see reason once the situation was properly explained to them. After all, they always did.